Runebound 3rd Edition, Runebound 2nd Edition of Dreams and Shadows. What do these games have in common? The fact that I can set up the experience, and in terms of table space and play space, by modern board gaming standards, they are extremely, extremely compact. That's what we're going to explore in this vlog. The challenge of being a board gaming enthusiast, plus a completionist, plus poor impulse control means one, myself, naturally gravitates towards gaming experiences that are full of expansions. If I love a game, if the core is amazing, I want all the expansions, Season 1, Season 2, the X packs, the character packs, the custom dice, and then, of course, playing them all out on the table if it's an amazing experience core. I want more and more. We want more and more. And the next thing you know, this game, in a good way, is bigger than a war game. It's making my Warhammer 40K army and my Warhammer 40,000 battles look like nothing. So this interesting duality with board games and kind of what I've been gravitating towards recently. I've talked about how in my board game collection I have 3 groups depending on what's going on. The first are games that I always play all the time. They don't even make it onto the shelf. The second are games that need to align to happen. Kingdom Death Monster, Twilight Imperium, fantastic games. I would play them every week. Descent 1st Edition, but the time required, the commitment, and the group of friends means it hits the table a couple of times a year. And then games that I enjoy, that third grouping like Space Hulk, Relic, games that kind of feed into Dungeons and Dragons, RPGs, / wargaming, that I get a fix with in terms of wargaming. So I don't need to play those titles quite as much, but I do enjoy them. So within that perspective of my pulls and what I've been playing, as of recently, I notice when I'm looking at Kickstarters and other gaming experiences, a solid, tight core has to have a good, solid experience. No crippleware, no, look, we were going to release this game. It's solid, but we can break it up into 3s. Here's the core, which is just crippled, and then you buy the expansions and we get you 3 for the price of 1. Like something that can stand alone absolutely on its own. More and more, I find myself looking towards that. And if there are expansions, ones that can directly integrate, add some variety to the game, but not bloat it. And I say bloat both in terms of rules, but also in terms of table space. So games where if I'm adding an expansion, if it comes with 4 or 5 base characters, adding some more characters. That's a great little boost there. It doesn't increase complexity or table space size. I'm looking at additional item cards or another type of scenario or another end boss type monster. But some of these games, now I'm going to turn over to the comments for a moment at 2 titles that I enjoy, just to illustrate. Games that the expansions are just out of control. Games where if you're playing with all the expansions, it is absolutely massive. And this doesn't necessarily have to be a miniature-based game. So the first, and I can say this, Talisman. I love Talisman. I love playing Talisman with all of the expansions. I mean, it's an amazing experience. But you want to talk about the main board, 4 side boards, stacks and stacks and stacks of cards, tokens. It's a big, big experience. Now, it's great to look at. It's amazing to play. But there is setup, takedown, and the presentation. And the second, Dark Souls, is another title that I enjoy, but playing with that core and adding in the expansions. Dark Souls itself, I'd say medium size. It's not a super table hog, but it takes up enough space. The space of the game in terms of the boards and stuff is well utilized. But the core, when you add on the extra monsters, when you add on the extra characters, when you add on more bosses, when you add on a mega boss, while it doesn't increase the size of the game in terms of the miniatures and the organization, setup and takedown, it takes a little while. So it's very interesting to see how I've kind of switched, not abandoned, never abandoned, but switched to titles that I've been pulling recently, both for this first grouping, both for solo play and playing with groups and friends. Not a huge table hog, something we can sit down, get a fun experience, and continue from that perspective. So in your own collection, turning it over to the comments, those titles that you love, that just take up a lot of table space. And secondary titles that in your collection that occupy a reasonable amount of space, but play excellent, in terms of narrative, in terms of rules, in terms of presentation, just with the core or are just a core experience. Bonus points in the comments if those titles happen to include dungeon crawlers or RPG type games that I should possibly be looking at to add to my collection.